Thank you very much for having me, Mark, Lauren. Since I've retired a year ago, or over a year ago now, I got to live about a year in anonymity, which is nice in the United States because there's not lots of people on the streets that know exactly who the professional soccer players are. For the last 23 years, you sort of live your life by going to training and ducking into a house so the media can't get around you. So when I was asked to come and speak, because I know a lot of the parents wouldn't have a clue who I was coming in here, you know, it was one of those. But anyways, I'm really happy to be part of the Viewpoint family now. Our daughter Allegra absolutely loves it, so I was more than happy to come out and share my thoughts. We also have, or I also run a local team here of 2005 birth years, so understanding a lot more of the parental thought process that goes on here, completely different of how it goes on in Europe. So I have a very interesting perspective on that. It was very nice. Again, I wanted to start this off with a little bit of a who am I, because some of you wouldn't know. So, and I know a lot of this was already spoken about. And I moved away in 1992, and I didn't come back until a year ago. So I lived in some wonderful places, met some wonderful people, lived in wonderful cultures along the way. Just so you do know as well, I also coached in Tottenham Hotspur's Academy at the U13 level, the U16 level, the U18 level, and the U21 level. So most of my education, although I can go into the professional game as an under-19 coach, most of my players are professional. Most of my education is with the youth players. So I understand the youth player's psyche, and I understand the parent's psyche. Some good, some bad on both sides. And I'm a parent as well, so I am definitely not perfect when it comes to how I go and watch my kids play in sporting events. Because I'm very, very competitive, and I am very, very opinionated. And I've had to learn to take my opinions and put them in there somewhere at times. Okay, so also so you should know is I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio. Meat and potatoes. Baseball, basketball, American football. My dad was he was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. He was American football. So as I go here, I was an All-American in tennis, basketball, and soccer. I turned down an invitation to play UCLA basketball. Jim Herrick thought I had 6 heads when he spoke to me and I told him that I was going to concentrate on soccer and that I was accepting the UCLA soccer scholarship and I would not be walking on, and I accepted the chance to play with the United States Olympic team. He was flabbergasted, as was everybody in Cleveland when I was turning that offer down. Okay, and I'll get to a little story just recently what happened in Cleveland with a bunch of journalists later on in the talk. I left UCLA after my 3rd year to turn professional, and this right here, most important, and this part. My mom and dad never, ever pushed me to play sports. If I wanted to be a cellist or a musician, no problem. No problem at all. And looking back on it, that's the most important thing. Now, once I loved sport and wanted to play it, they were there to back me, and they would drive me here, there, and everywhere to do it. But they didn't push me to do it. I never felt pressure going back to my house, going into the car on the way home from a game. And it's really important. So I put this in a parent's role into 6 categories. There's some good and a lot of not so good in these top 5, which is why I separated this. Okay? No, I mean, not all of it's bad. Not all of it's bad, don't worry. But this is the real important stuff because we're parents. That's the important stuff. The kids want to know that we're parents, not their agent, not the coach, not the guy that has to go run and yell at the referee, things of that nature. And believe me, and you'll see some stats here in a moment, this is important. Okay, the first one I'll go into is the meal ticket. Our kids are not labels, okay? So when you go to watch them, they should think that you're there to enjoy watching what they do. Good or bad? Good or bad? Our kids' fame is not ours. If they turn into a Tiger Woods, it's their fame. It's not ours. Okay? We should be proud. We should be happy, but it's their fame. Our kids' goals they score, points they score, sets they win, touchdowns they score, spikes they make, they're not ours. Okay? They're theirs, they're the coaches, and they're the teammates. This is a big one. And again, I'm so proud, I think we all are, when our children do something, and we should be, absolutely. But bragging rights, things of that nature, don't keep them to yourself. Because it does, and again, we'll show some stats, it does embarrass the kids. And it affects them socially as well. Some parents spend all their money, all their family time, and ignore school to try to live vicariously through their kids with sport. And again, each and every one of you know your children far better than I ever will. And I'll know my children better than you will. So this isn't going to be every single person out there, okay? But this is important. Family time, very important. Something that I have to get better at, because I was retired, and all of a sudden I've taken on like 6 different jobs. I'm sure my wife is delighted. So that's something right there that I know that I have to get better at. This, right here, can never happen, especially if you're in wonderful environments like a Viewpoint. Can't happen. Reason is, what percentage of high school athletes get scholarships? I think the coaching staff will know this. It's less than 2%. Less than 2. However, what percentage of high school parents think their children will get college scholarships? More than 30%. What percentage of high school athletes turn professional? Less than 1%. But parents think that a quarter of our kids are going to be professionals. Okay? At Tottenham, where I coached, less than 1% of all trialists, and this is about 5,000 per year, less than 1% make it into the academy. 90% of those never make it to a pro contract at 17 years of age. Keeping in mind, this pro contract at 17 is 2-tiered. It's 35,000 pounds a year or 37,000 pounds a year, and that does not mean you're going to get the next one. So that means that you would have dropped out of school at 16, you would have signed your pro contract at 17, you could get released at 18, and then what? And it's a big conundrum that John McDermott, and he has no problem with me mentioning his name. I told him I was speaking here today, one of the best youth developers in all of Europe. He came to me 4 years ago, said, Brad, we have a really big problem. When we release our players, we're not doing them a service. They come from some terrible backgrounds, bad family lives, broken homes, poor areas. And at 18, our job is to produce the professional player. And if they're not good enough, they're on the street. They go. And they've left their school as a bigwig. They've left their social environment as a bigwig. They've left all this behind thinking that I'm going to make it, as we all do, as the 25 and 30% think. And then they go back. And then what happens? They're failures in the eyes of all their peers. Okay? So one thing that I helped him do is get involved with colleges in the United States. So I think last year we got 11 of our players from the 16, 17, 18 age group to come and get scholarships in the United States. Now it's not a lot, and we have a lot to deal with the professional amateur scenarios, but at least it's a start. Okay? At least it's a start. I also spoke with Josh Onema and Marcus Edwards, and I apologize because you won't know. These aren't household names for you. But these are 2 professional players. I had Marcus Edwards on my U13 team, just signed his professional contract. And I had Josh Onema on my U16 team, and he just signed a big contract. He's a very wealthy human being now at age 19. Now, Josh Onema, I was called into the office by John McDermott. This is my 2nd year coaching. And John McDermott, I walk in, and Josh Onema's dad is sitting there. And Josh Onema's dad is not a very happy-looking individual. And I have no idea why John McDermott has asked me to come in. And he says, Brad, what would you do? And I said, about what? Mr. Onema wants 500,000 pounds, and he wants us to buy him a house, or he's going to take his kid out of the club. Well, I'm thinking, all right, he's testing me here. I don't really know. I don't know what he wants from me. So I say, what club? And he says, Manchester City. And I said, Josh will never get a chance to play at Manchester City. They just signed foreign players. And he goes, and I said, so I would tell Josh's dad to go ahead, take him. But I think to Josh, you should stay here and sign your contract. Josh looks at his dad and said, I don't want to stay here, or looks at me and his dad, comes back to me, I don't want to stay here because my dad takes all my money out of my account and I can't change that until I'm 18. So my point is here, we got it all rectified. Coaches brought them through, nearly didn't make it because of the parent. Okay, so the meal ticket. The meal ticket. Don't push your kids to the brink of that. Marcus Edwards, broken home, brother, one of his brothers, gang, other two, fantastic. Marcus is a great kid. He's a great kid. And his parents weren't there. So the coaches, my point here is the coaches and who they're with on the field are very, very important people. And yes, not all coaches are great. I get it. And as parents, you need to suss that out. I get it. And you want to look after your kids. I get it. But having the coaches be their role models is more important than the parents having their kids be the meal ticket. Okay, the outlet. This is one that surprised the heck out of me when I moved back here. So there is, where is she? There's a parent here on, and their son is on my 2005 team that I coach. The noise levels from the parents in these games is incredible. So the kids, they can't be our outlet for letting off steam if they play poorly. The referees can't be the outlet. I mean, the amount of screaming at a referee. Let's just think about this for a second. You go and watch your 10-year-old play, and the referee calls a foul or makes a terrible decision. There's a penalty, and the kids lose. What are the ramifications, the real ramifications? Let's think of it. I mean, does it warrant running 25 yards and getting in the ref's face? And did anyone see the story about the kid who punched the referee, and the referee ended up passing away? No, it happened in Colorado, I believe it was. No, these things happen here. So at Tottenham, or in England, we have this nice big glass wall, and the parents stay behind there. So you can imagine what happened when I came here to coach, and I'd step on, and this was the under-19 national team, and I get one of the parents' dads come in, Mr. Friedel, can I talk to you? And you are? Well, I'm Mr. So-and-so. It's like, no, you can't. I was like, and I go over to my staff, I was like, is this normal? And they're like, yeah, why? I was like, they're not entitled. Entitlement's a great word. Entitlement's a great word. And I understand when you're in pay-as-you-play structures that you are entitled, which is one of the reasons I'll get to what I do with my team, why it's free of charge for the kids, because the entitlement thing I want to try to take away. A survey done in Southern California. Okay, so we did this with U.S. Soccer Federation. 1,000 high school athletes, boys and girls, between the ages of 12 and 16 were asked how they felt when they heard their parents' voices. And at sporting events. And let me tell you, so not cheering when a goal scored, or when a basket scored, not that. Not even encouragement. It's not that. It's when you hear the single voice and yelling at the referee or coaching your child on the sidelines. 79%. Almost 80% said, and this was done anonymously, we made sure that their names wouldn't be out, said they either despised it, they felt embarrassed, said it affects their performance negatively, and this one's the big one. I didn't expect this. It affects their social life negatively. So when they go back with their peers, they're obviously getting made fun of for their parents' reactions when they go back into their social environments. Now, I know every time one of my kids comes home and says so-and-so was mean to me or this happened, you just get this pit in your stomach. Can you imagine if that's us causing that angst when they go to school? And we don't even know it. And it might be done innocently. It might be done innocently where you get pent up in that referee and you go out there and you yell at him and you get in the car and you think, oh, you know, you played great, but that referee was awful. And that's going to get on to my next point. The mentor. So parents should be the open door for the kids to come when they're confused, need advice, possibly when they don't want to speak to the coach. My advice is always try to veer them back to the coach, okay, with encouragement. Parents should not be judgmental about the performances. So how many, I'm guilty, by the way, how many of us have gotten in the car and looked at your son or daughter and said, why'd you do that today? Yeah, listen, we've all done it. I've done it. Again, I said at the beginning, I'm not perfect. Far, far from perfect. So, you know, how did you miss that shot? How did you miss that goal? You guys would have won. Why did the coach take you off? And think of all that. Before you speak, think of all that. That goes, because the kids register everything. They soak it all up. And sometimes, and I know my eldest daughter, she doesn't want to hear any of it. She's just like, and it's usually my wife and her start fighting. And a funny little anecdote, when she ran in her first track race, my wife stood out right on the edge of the track, and as Isabella came by, she started going, come on, Izzy, come on. And I saw my wife, and I just went. And I walked all the way over here. She goes, where'd you go? And I was like, I am not standing by you if you're going to do that. I was like, there's no way. And we got in a little bit of a fight with that one. But anyway, parents should stay positive. Example of how a conversation in a car after defeat. Question asked, did you have fun? I can't wait to watch you again. I really enjoyed watching you and your teammates play. What did you learn today? Huge one. Not just on the field, off the field. What did you learn from your teammates? Did you learn one of your teammates is really low on confidence and you can help them out as a friend? Because keep in mind, less than 0.6% of these people are ever going to turn professional. So this is recreation. This is life lessons. Do you think you want to try something different for the next game? You know, do you want me to drive you somewhere else? Do you want me to help you with something? Positive, positive, positive. Because that coach after the game may have said something negative to your son or daughter, and maybe rightly so. So they don't need then another negative afterwards. Why didn't you make that play? I think we went over this. You need to work harder. I want to change your team because you lost. We'll get to that. We'll get to the winning in a little bit. Because you lost. And keep in mind, I'm the most competitive person in this room. I bet any of you. Okay. I did that again. All right, questions, not to ask. Advice, okay. This one right here. As I look back on my career, this was probably the best thing my dad had ever said to me. No matter what, I hated, pardon if there's baseball coach in there, I didn't like baseball playing it. Great sport, but it wasn't for me. And I started one season. I played 2 games. Team was awful. We were losing like 22-0. I'm competitive. I was a brat. I was like, and I said, I'm not going. My dad said, if you ever start a season, you finish it no matter what. That's the only real advice he ever gave me, other than I know for a fact, because after he passed away about a year ago, my mom told me that when I said that I was playing soccer, what? He was an American football player. What are you talking about, soccer? Yeah, Brad wants to play soccer. I thought he was going to disown, my mom said I thought he was going to disown me there, and then thankfully he didn't. But if your son or daughter is ever involved in a team that is losing or is bad, let him finish out the season, or her finish out the season. That's a really important thing. When you as the parent go to them and say, we're going to change your team because you're bad, it's a quitting instinct that you're putting and instilling into your child. Now, you might think it's looking for the next best thing. It's a quitting instinct that you're putting into your child. I deal with players all the time, and I deal with coaches, I deal with agents, I deal with parents all the time. And that's generally what happens. when you start doing that. If we push for perfection in sport and it doesn't happen, think about this one. How do you think the kids feel? And I mentioned this, the example of Tottenham cutting kids and going back to their roots. If the coach cuts a player for performances, it's normal. Not everyone's going to be elite. If the kid gets back in the car or goes back home and can't look up at the parent because they feel ashamed, I mean, that's terrible. Because just because they're not going to be a professional basketball player does not mean that they can't be a fantastic lawyer or an outstanding businessman or woman. Not everyone can be the professional athlete. Not everyone gets college scholarships. And it doesn't mean that they can't play the recreational sport, and it doesn't mean that they're failures. Because success is reaching your potential as well. And it's the same in sport. And I think us as parents, we lose focus of that. I think we really do. We just think, professional, we think winning. The crutch. Don't be part of the problem. Be the solution. Referee's fault. Why didn't the coach play this system? Why did that person play? The field was bad. The weather was bad. I've heard it all. I've said some of it. The solution. You should speak to your coach in a good way to find out what he or she is thinking. There's no problem. Coaches are up there. If a player comes and speaks to you, you speak to him, correct? And listen, sometimes we as coaches, we have to give harsh truths. But that's no problem. No problem at all, because that's what a coach's job is. That's not a parent's job. A parent's job is to be that, what did the coach say? The coach said, I'm not working hard enough. Well, do you think you are? Can I help you work harder? You know, it's, well, why aren't you working harder then? If the coach says you should work harder, you got to work harder. You know, it's tone of voice. Positivity, positivity. The parent also should not be seen as the easy way out, someone that fights the battles. Athletes are competitors, and this next slide is really important. All top athletes, I've yet to play with one, play against one, be around one that is not a competitor. And you don't have to keep score at the younger ages, especially in soccer, and we can talk about other sports because I know there's different ages, especially like gymnastics we just saw in the Olympics. The kids start a lot younger. You don't have to keep score to find out who the competitive players are. They'll keep score on their own in the game. You don't have to have a league table to decide who's number one. They'll know. You don't have to have a medal to say you're the leading goal scorer. The kids know who scored the goals. They know. And us as coaches know. But the parents don't have to get involved in all that with the winning, the winning, the winning, the winning, the winning. So, winning clouds our judgment. And I said already, I'm the most competitive person in this room. There might be a couple people up there that will test me on that, but I'm up there. I'm up there. So, when is winning important in sport? What age, what sport? I can tell you from soccer. So at Tottenham, if I want one person to answer this. What age, you're not allowed to answer this. What age do you think we start keeping a league table? And this is the English Premier League, which is the most physical, hardest, and most exciting league in the world to play in. What age do we start keeping scores in our games and a league table? 9. 19. No. Okay, 13. Yep, so it's U14. Yeah, U14. Why? Because at the younger ages, we teach them all the technique that's needed. What's that? Is it up there? Yeah, okay. No, okay, that's good. Oh, is it up there? Oh, sorry. I didn't know I put the answer up there. So, okay, good. So we don't keep score because we teach the kids the technique. Now, the funny thing is that, and I have this rule with the team that I coach, the young kids. Every time I say, right, we're going to play for 2 minutes, they know exactly what the score is. They know who scored. They know how they scored. They know why they scored. That's the most important one, why they scored. So I asked with the little boys named Ian, scored, I think, 5 goals last weekend in our 2 games. So I spoke to him on Monday. I said, you scored a lot of goals. I saw everything on video. I watched it again. I said, who assisted all your goals? Couldn't answer it. I don't think all the parents could have answered it. But I guarantee you, every parent would know who scored the goals. It's a big difference. It's a big mind shift. How about this one? What are the ramifications for you as a parent if your son or daughter loses a recreation level sporting event? Anyone? I hear a lot of yelling at the games. None, right? I mean, there's no it's not going to affect your life to the point other than talking to your child afterwards. So when I went and watched Allegra play her first ever soccer game, yeah, she's 9 years old, first ever soccer game. She's never wanted to play soccer until now at Viewpoint. So thanks for that. So she went and played. The other team, so she's 9. The other team's coach, they were losing 1-0. The other team's coach on the other end was telling their team to waste time at the end of the game so they could win. What we do in youth development in the rest of the world for soccer is we have them continue playing the same way because the winning at age 9 is absolutely irrelevant. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. We see who the competitive kids are. And if the child is not competitive, they're not going to make it to the pro ranks. But if you instill only winning, you're going to play the more maturated kids at the end of the game so they score. You're not going to teach anyone anything. You're going to play the better kids. You're not going to play somebody who's not as good in another position. They're not going to learn things. It's a complete difference between winning and development. And the development is a huge spectrum. It's development on the field and it's development off the field, which are two entirely separate categories and both enormously important. And I'd say off the field is probably more important because, as the other slides had suggested, it caters to more of the masses. Okay, this one. So BF310 is my team. And again, I have a parent in the room that knows this. I interact with the parents as much as I need to, as much as I can, as much as I want to at times. But I have a no-parent policy when it comes to if the parents say anything to a referee, their child's out of the club. If the parents say anything negatively towards another player, they're out of the club. It is free of charge. I subsidize it with a couple other people, so there's no entitlement there. Do I want them to encourage their sons? 100%. Do I want them to win every game? You better believe I do. But that's not what I emphasize, is it?
No, they don't think that.
Not at all. They don't think that. I think that with Ken. They don't know that. And if they ever find out, you're in trouble. Okay. And the reason I do this, and don't get me wrong, I don't close the door on parents. I'll talk to the parents. But I do not want the kids to play the game looking over their shoulder. So what happens when a coach is screaming all the time or a parent is screaming all the time? Two things. One is the child can't think for themselves and they can't learn. They're continuously looking for suggestions from the sideline. The other thing is they hate it and they switch it off. They don't like the sport, they won't like the team, they won't like their teammates, they just won't like being there. And I don't know if there's a third one. I think those are the only two in my experiences when there are shouting, overly aggressive coaches and overly aggressive parents. Now, onto the real positive one. Okay, the other ones had some positive and some negative. This is the real positive stuff. This is where we can really make a difference in our kids' lives. Communication, positive reinforcement. When things go well, you're there. And when they don't go well, you're there. It's really important stuff. Common sense. It's common sense stuff. But we get lost in sport for some reason. And I know there's an intensity to it. And I love the intensity to it. But we do get lost. We get lost a lot. And I see parents going overboard. And now that I'm a lot more experienced in the coaching realm, I can go to a game, stand 20 feet off the sidelines, and watch the kids crumble as they hear their parents. I just stand back and watch it. It's amazing. and if somebody yells at the referees, to watch how the kid reacts. Now, also sometimes, if the parent yells at the referee, what does the child do? The child might go and yell at the referee as well, because he just saw mom or dad doing it. You know, and that happens also, where the negativity comes into play. Encouragement, reality. That gets to the percentages, the reality. Now, if your son or daughter is really good, us coaches, correct? We'll let the parents know. Believe me, we'll let the parents know. Okay? Confidence. How about this one? When we go watch our kids do anything, should be enjoyable, right? Now, if you're going to watch an 8-year-old play and they win or lose, if they lose, is it not enjoyable? To watch your child play a sport that's not professional, that's recreation, they're learning how to play? Still enjoyable for me. Now, if one of my kids were ever to get to that point where I thought that they could go to the next level, yeah, because of my background, I could push them in the right direction. But I promise you, and I think the coach viewpoint that was, I know Tracy was there, somebody asked me, are you going to go and help coach? I said, no, I am here to watch. And I stood back and I watched. And I would always do that. Guidance. Go to your coaches. If you don't have a sports background, go to the coaches. They'll give you the guidance. If they are not talented in sports, guide them. Find out what they like. Don't go, oh, I really want them to get the football scholarship. You know, if they're not getting the football scholarship, what else do you like in life? Communicate. Because it's not a failure. It is not a failure if they don't get that college scholarship to play football. Okay, let's go into this one. Encourage multiple sports. So earlier I said something happened in Cleveland. I was inducted in the Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame last week, and I couldn't make it out there. So my mom went and accepted the award on my behalf. I was on the phone, and they did a question and answer. And there was a whole group of all the Cleveland journalists, the current ones, and then the retired ones that were employed while I was there. A couple of which I wouldn't speak to, apparently, when I was growing up. I don't know why. So my mom told me that. I didn't know. Anyways, that's an aside. So my mom gets on stage, and they said really robustly to my mom, why did you let this athlete fall through the cracks? I'm like, so I piped in. I said, I'm getting inducted in the Hall of Fame, right? So I don't think I've fallen through the cracks. And they said, well, why didn't you play American football, basketball, or baseball? I said, baseball I didn't really care for and didn't like the coach. Basketball, I was an All-American, and I had the opportunity to play. I chose soccer. American football was the same season as soccer, so I played soccer. Ice hockey, I loved it, and I was offered to play professionally when I moved to Canada to play semi-pro, but I didn't want to move away from home. But I'm not sure how that constitutes falling through the cracks. And they went to another one and said, why did you let him play multiple sports? So my mom's a physical education teacher for over 50 years. And she said, because all the other sports help him with certain movements, the core strength, the moving, the up and down, the social environment. She goes, I didn't want him just to have friends. I never thought he was going to be a professional player, but once he liked sports, I wasn't going to have him just be friends with, you know, if he liked tennis with one tennis coach. You know, she goes, so I encouraged all the multiple sports. And I, as a parent, did all the driving to go do it because that's what he enjoyed. And I tell my parents, I tell the parents on the team, I have allowed players to miss practice because they had basketball practice. Now, when you get to a certain level, yes, you're going to have to try to focus on one, especially if you're good. But when you're younger, growing up, and it's gone out of the school systems as well, a lot of the gymnastics, the movements, a lot of things, it is all fantastic. I was a goalkeeper, okay? Core strength, balance, gymnastics would be great. Ballet would have been great. Yoga, fantastic. Now, you don't have to be the world's best. Did anyone follow Premier League here and hear of Harry Kane, Tottenham? Okay, so he's a young player. I had him in one of my young groups. Unbelievable cricketer. There's not one great goalkeeper that I've ever played with or against that wasn't a good athlete, that couldn't play the other sports. But what I found in the United States, I came back. My first trip, I took my U.S. under-19 team to Canary Islands. We saw the paddle tennis. I don't know if anyone's been in Spain and Portugal and seen the paddle tennis. And we took them out there to do a cool down. 90% of my kids didn't know how to hold a racket. Back when I was growing up in the early 1990s, when I was turning professional, we would have been out there gambling. We would have had the most intense, and it was supposed to be a cool down. The coach would have gone, hey, calm down, this is a cool down. And we would have been competitive and trying to beat each other. These kids they had just been, no, you're a soccer player. And you have to play soccer all the time. And soccer is what you know. And that's it. And I mean, the kids couldn't throw a tennis. They couldn't throw the ball. They couldn't hit the. We were amazed as a staff, all the staff members. I had arms crossed. What has happened in the last 20 years? What has gone on? Because all the time, Cristiano Ronaldo, great athlete. Lionel Messi, great athlete. You wanted Gareth Bale, unbelievable athlete. He hits a golf ball about 320 yards, 330 yards. They're all good athletes. But yet, when you focus just on one, I think it limits you. I'm not saying there's always the exception to the rule. And I know you have the Andre Agassi dad. You know, there's that saying, someone had brought it up, behind every good athlete there's a crazy parent. Not true. It's not true. There are some exceptions. So Tiger Woods' dad, yes, he had the golf club in his hand when he was so young. Andre Agassi's dad. And so there are always going to be exceptions to the rule. But there was also an article, I don't know if anybody's heard the name Kobe Jones. Like he doesn't put any soccer paraphernalia in his house because he doesn't want his kids growing up to just play soccer and only know that his dad was soccer. He wants his kids to do what they want to do. And if they want to play soccer, then he's going to encourage it and help it. So this is a big one, technological age. At the under-19 level, if I were to allow the boys to have their phones everywhere, not one of my players would talk to anyone. They go on the bus, they'll go in a meal room, them on there. It's amazing. So when I first took the job, I thought, you know what, I'm going to be a progressive coach. I'm going to let them have their phones. Just turn the ringtones off. And then about the second day, I'm like, no one's talking to each other. No one wanted a conversation. So again, you know, as parents, I would encourage them, if they do like sports, watch the sports, you know, on TV, but talk to their friends. Go out. How many people nowadays see their child go out in the backyard or to the park and play unstructured sports? 1, 2, 3, a few. Okay, we see very little of this now. I see the coaches up there nodding their heads. So John McDermott, I walked into his office one day and he had his head in his hands. And I was like, what's wrong? He goes, do we structure things too much for our kids? He goes, I'd love to just see our kids go out and throw 2 bags down and another 2 bags, play 4v4, without me there, without someone having a referee, I would actually love it if they went and found a little basketball hoop and started shooting baskets, even though we're a soccer club. You know, things of this nature, the multiple sports, getting them away from their phones, all that stuff is great for their development. It really is. Encourage it. If your child's in the house and they're bored and they go straight to the computer, go outside. Go play. I mean, obviously make sure it's a safe environment, but go out, you know, encourage that. Of course. And that's a great way as a parent to help them with the sport. And so you all know, I deal with all these every day. And a lot of, the vast majority have been wonderful experiences. They really have. And there's been a few that have been not great experiences. But what I will tell you is, do you think it helps or hurt the players or your children if the parents are problems? Coaches? I mean, you don't have to answer because I know these are your parents. I can answer. It doesn't help at all. Because if you ever have 2 kids that are comparable in a position and you have to cut one or the other, I can tell you right now that the parent could be the reason that they get cut or not. Now, you can like it or not, but that is fact. Might be different in high school sport, but when it comes to the national team and there's no entitlement there, that can happen. All right, thank you very, very much.